It was the first day of school at Westwood High, California, and the hallways were buzzing with students catching up after summer break. But amid the laughter and chatter, a terrifying scene was unfolding. A group of girls had surrounded a quiet, dark-skinned girl near the lockers, their faces twisted with amusement. Before we dive in, welcome to my channel. If you love stories filled with drama, shocking twists, and powerful endings, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment below. Trust me, you do not want to miss this one. Her name was Ava Carter, a new transfer student, small in frame, dressed simply, and clearly out of place. Standing across from her was Madison Blake, the school's infamous bully. Tall, blonde, and ruthless, she was the daughter of a wealthy businessman who owned several luxury brands in Los Angeles. Madison folded her arms and sneered. "Oh look, the new girl thinks she can just walk in here like she belongs," Madison mocked. The other students gathered to watch, some recording on their iPhones. Ava, holding back tears, stood her ground. "I do not want any trouble," Ava said softly. But Madison shoved her shoulder. "Trouble? You are the trouble. Why don't you go back to wherever you came from? You don't belong in this school, and you definitely don't belong near people like us." The crowd laughed cruelly. Ava clenched her fists, her heart pounding. She could handle mean words, but what happened next was unforgivable. Madison suddenly grabbed Ava's backpack and dumped it on the floor. Her books, her lunch, and a framed photo spilled out. Ava gasped. It was a picture of her and her father, Vin Diesel. The students froze. Madison stared at the photo, then at Ava. "No way. Are you seriously claiming Vin Diesel is your dad?" she scoffed. "Nice try, loser." Ava's eyes burned with anger, but she did not have to say a word, because behind them, a deep, unmistakable voice echoed through the hall. "What did you just say to my daughter?" The hallway fell silent. Standing at the entrance of the school, dressed in a black leather jacket and sunglasses, was Vin Diesel himself. And he did not look happy. Silence gripped the hallway as students turned in shock. Some fumbled with their phones trying to confirm if their eyes were deceiving them. No way. It could not be. Could it? But there he was. Vin Diesel, the Hollywood legend, the Fast and Furious icon, standing right inside their school. His sharp eyes locked onto Madison, who stood frozen, her face turning pale. But before we continue, ask yourself, what would you do if you just humiliated someone, only to find out their father was one of the most powerful celebrities in the world? Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you speechless. And if you have not already, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment below. This story is only getting started. Vin took slow, deliberate steps forward, his muscular frame towering over the scene. His presence alone sent waves of intimidation through the air. The students held their breath. Ava, tears still glistening in her eyes, quickly bent down to pick up her things. But before she could reach for the framed picture of her and her father, Vin picked it up first. He looked at it, then at Ava, his strong features softening just slightly before he turned back to Madison. "You threw my daughter's things on the ground?" His voice was calm, but lethal. Madison swallowed hard. I didn't know." "Oh, now you want to talk." Vin's tone sharpened. "You had plenty to say just a second ago. Go ahead. Finish what you were saying." The students murmured in disbelief. This was the moment of reckoning. Madison forced a nervous laugh, trying to regain control. "Look, I was just joking. I didn't know she was, related to you or whatever." Vin let out a low chuckle, but there was no amusement in it. "So, you think it's okay to treat people like trash, unless they have a famous last name?" His voice grew sharper, his jaw tightening. Madison stammered, her confidence crumbling. No, I just..." Vin turned to the students. "How many of you just stood there and watched?" His deep voice boomed across the hall. A few kids lowered their heads, guilty. "This is what is wrong with the world today," Vin continued, his voice thick with disappointment. "People love to stand around and watch someone suffer. They laugh at the weak. But let me tell you something. He crouched down and helped Ava pick up her books, his movements careful, almost fatherly. Then, he stood up and faced Madison again. You think bullying makes you powerful? It doesn't. It makes you weak. Real strength isn't about pushing people down. It is about lifting them up. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded in agreement. Even the students who had laughed earlier now looked ashamed. Madison gritted her teeth, feeling the humiliation of being called out by one of the biggest stars in the world. But she was not done yet. So what? Just because you are some Hollywood big shot, you think you can walk in here and lecture me? She snapped, trying to mask her fear with arrogance. This is my school. You can't tell me what to do. A few students gasped. Was she seriously talking back to Vin Diesel? Vin's expression did not change. He just smirked. Oh, really? His voice dropped to a dangerous low. And that was when the principal's voice echoed over the intercom. Madison Blake, report to my office, immediately. Madison stiffened. The crowd erupted into whispers. Ava, still shaken, looked up at her father. He met her gaze and gave her a small nod, as if to say, I've got you. But this was only the beginning. Because what Madison did next was about to take this drama to an entirely new level. Madison's face flushed red as the entire hallway buzzed with murmurs. This was not how things were supposed to go. She had spent years ruling the school, making sure everyone knew she was untouchable. But now? She had just been humiliated in front of the entire student body, by Vin Diesel himself. But she was not going down without a fight. Imagine being the queen bee of your school, only to have one moment completely ruin your reputation. Would you stay quiet, or fight back? Well, Madison was about to make a move that no one saw coming. Keep watching, and if you have not already, subscribe, like, and drop a comment. Because this story, it is far from over. Madison clenched her fists. Number. She would not let this man walk in here and turn her into a joke. You think you can embarrass me in my own school? She hissed, taking a step toward Vin Diesel, her voice shaking with rage. You have no idea who you are messing with. Vin raised an eyebrow, amused. Oh? And what exactly are you going to do about it? Madison's lips curled into a smirk. She whipped out her phone, hit the record button, and pointed it straight at Vin. Let's see how people feel about a grown man intimidating a teenage girl, she sneered. Go ahead, keep threatening me. I will make sure this video goes viral before you even leave the building. The hallway fell silent. A few students exchanged nervous glances. Was she seriously trying to cancel Vin Diesel? But Vin, he just laughed. A deep, low chuckle that sent shivers down the hallway. You really think you can flip this on me? His voice was dangerously calm. You bullied my daughter, humiliated her in front of everyone, and now that you are facing the consequences, you want to play the victim? Madison's smirk faltered. Let me tell you something about the internet, Vin continued, his tone turning sharp. People might fall for lies, but they love the truth even more. And the truth? He took a step closer, his presence overwhelming. This entire hallway saw what you did. That video? It is not going to make me look bad. It is going to expose you. Madison's grip on her phone tightened. She glanced around, expecting students to back her up. But instead, they looked away. Some had their arms crossed. Others nodded in agreement with Vin. Even her so-called friends were taking a step back. Because for the first time ever, Madison was not in control. Her heart pounded. This was not supposed to happen. She started. But before she could finish, the principal appeared at the end of the hallway. Madison Blake! Now! His voice boomed across the corridor. Madison's face went pale. Ava exhaled softly, her hands still trembling. She looked up at her father, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt safe. But this was not over. Because what Madison did next would prove just how far she was willing to go to protect her power. The principal's voice echoed through the hallway, but Madison did not move. Instead, she tightened her grip on her phone, her mind racing. This was slipping out of her hands, and she hated it. "I said now, Madison," the principal snapped, his tone sharp and unforgiving. The crowd of students parted as he strode toward them. Madison swallowed hard. She was in real trouble. But then, an idea struck her. She turned toward the principal with a face full of fake tears. "Principal Harris, please. I was just trying to protect myself," she cried, her voice trembling. "He is a grown man, and he came here just to scare me. This is harassment. I was just trying to defend myself." Gasps rippled through the hallway. A few students exchanged glances, but no one spoke up. Ava's stomach twisted. She knew this game too well. This was how Madison always got away with things. She would play the victim, twist the story, and make sure everyone believed her lies. But this time, things were different. Before the principal could respond, Vin Diesel let out a deep sigh. "You really do not get it, do you?" he said, his voice low and steady. "You think those fake tears are going to save you? That you can manipulate your way out of this?" Madison's breath hitched. "Let me make something clear," Vin continued, taking a slow step forward. "You messed with the wrong person." He turned to Principal Harris, his gaze firm. "I did not come here to start trouble, but I will not stand by while my daughter is being bullied." The principal rubbed his temples, looking exhausted. "Madison, I have had enough complaints about you this year. And now, we have an A-list celebrity confirming what we already suspected." Madison's face burned. "You cannot expel me. My father—" "Oh, I already called him," Principal Harris interrupted, holding up his phone. "He is on his way." The color drained from Madison's face. Ava watched in shock. For years, she had suffered in silence, believing nothing would ever change. But now, she was seeing Madison panic for the first time. But then, Madison's face twisted in fury. "You think this is over?" she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I am not going down alone." And with that, she stormed off. Ava felt her chest tighten. This was not the end. She could feel it. Madison was planning something. And whatever it was going to be bad. Ava barely had a moment to breathe before she felt a cold chill run down her spine. Something about the way Madison had stormed off did not sit right with her. She was planning something. Ava was sure of it. Just as she turned to Vin Diesel, the principal's phone rang. He picked it up, his expression quickly shifting from frustration to concern. "You did what?" he snapped, his voice rising. "This is unacceptable, Madison. This is beyond school discipline. This is criminal." The entire hallway went silent. The principal hung up and turned to them with a grim look. "Your father just called." Madison ran straight to the local news station, telling them that you, Ava, and your father physically threatened her in the school hallway. Ava's blood ran cold. She had seen Madison twist the truth before. But this was a whole new level of evil. She told them she feared for her life, and now reporters are waiting outside the school. "They want a statement from you and your father," Principal Harris said, rubbing his forehead. Ava turned to Vin Diesel, expecting anger, frustration, maybe even panic. But instead, he smirked. "So that is her game?" he said, crossing his arms. "Good. Let us play." Ava's brows furrowed. "What do you mean?" Vin turned to Principal Harris. "Call the station back. Tell them we will give them their statement. Live on camera." Ava's heart skipped a beat. "Wait, live?" she asked, eyes wide. "Oh, absolutely," Vin said. "You see, Ava, bullies like Madison thrive on controlling the narrative. She thinks she is untouchable because she is used to spinning her version of the truth. But what happens?" He grinned, his eyes flashing with confidence. "When the whole world hears the real story." Ava felt her breath hitch. She had spent her entire life feeling small, unheard, like no one would ever believe her. But now she had someone in her corner who was not afraid to fight back. Outside, the flashing lights of news cameras lit up the entrance of the school. Ava swallowed hard, knowing that this was it. The whole world was about to hear the truth. The air outside was electric. The school entrance was swarmed with reporters, microphones in hand, their cameras flashing like fireworks. Madison stood at the center of it all, crocodile tears streaming down her face as she painted herself as the helpless victim. "I was just trying to stand up for myself," she sobbed dramatically, her voice shaking for effect. I never thought they'd come after me like this." The crowd of reporters ate it up. "Are you saying Vin Diesel and his adopted daughter threatened you?" one journalist asked. "Yes," Madison gasped. "I was terrified. You know how powerful he is. Who would believe me over him?" Suddenly, the whispers in the crowd shifted. People were starting to doubt Vin Diesel. And that was when the doors burst open. Vin Diesel stepped out, his presence commanding absolute silence. Ava walked beside him, her heart pounding, but she held her head high. No more hiding, no more fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Vin began, his deep voice cutting through the noise, "I appreciate your time. Since Madison wants to share her side, let me share ours, with proof." The reporters stiffened. "Proof?" Vin pulled out his phone, tapping the screen. Instantly, a large LED billboard across the street lit up. The crowd turned, their eyes widening as video footage from the school's security cameras began to play. The entire bullying incident played out in high definition. Madison shoving Ava, Madison spitting insults, Madison ripping Ava's book bag and humiliating her. Not once did Ava lay a hand on her. The crowd gasped. The reporters pivoted. Suddenly, all their cameras turned to Madison. "Madison, care to explain this?" one journalist demanded, her face drained of color. This is taken out of context," she stammered. But the damage was done. The live broadcast had already gone viral. Millions of people were watching this unfold in real time. "You wanted the world to see, Madison," Vin Diesel said coolly. "So we showed them the truth." Ava felt something shift inside her. For the first time in her life, she was not just a victim, she was standing tall. And Madison? Her reign of terror was about to come crashing down. Madison stood frozen, her lies crumbling around her like a house of cards in a storm. The crowd had turned on her. The whispers grew louder, the reporters leaning in, cameras flashing in her face. "Madison, do you have anything to say about this footage?" one journalist pressed. "You clearly bullied Ava first. Why did you lie?" another demanded. Madison's lips trembled. She was exposed, humiliated, and cornered. Her father had always bailed her out of trouble before, but this time, there was no way out. The school principal stepped forward, his voice firm. "Madison, lying to the media, falsely accusing a student, and attempting to ruin the reputation of a respected public figure is unacceptable. There will be consequences." Ava watched as Madison staggered back, shaking her head. This was not how things were supposed to go for her. She had always won. But not this time. Not anymore. Vin Diesel placed a steady hand on Ava's shoulder, looking at the reporters. "This is why standing up to bullies is so important. No child should ever feel powerless. No child should ever feel like their voice does not matter. Ava has endured years of torment. Today, that ends." Ava looked up at him, her eyes glistening. For the first time in her life, someone truly had her back. Vin turned to the cameras, his expression serious. "To everyone watching, if you believe in standing up against bullying, if you believe in justice, then join us. Hit that subscribe button, like this video, and comment your thoughts below. Let us make sure no kid has to suffer in silence ever again." Ava smiled, warmth spreading in her chest. This was not just about her anymore. This was about every kid who had ever felt small. And today, the world was listening. Madison's world was collapsing. The reporters had completely turned on her, throwing out question after question, each one sharper than the last. "Madison, were you lying just to get sympathy? Do you have anything to say to Ava? Is it true you have bullied other students before?" Her breath came in quick gasps as she looked for an escape. But there was none. Even her own friends, the same ones who used to laugh at her cruel jokes, were stepping away from her, as if afraid to be seen with her now. And then, her father arrived. A sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up, and out stepped Nathaniel Carter, one of the richest men in the city. His expression was thunderous as he approached, his expensive shoes clicking against the pavement. Madison's shoulders sagged in relief. Her father always fixed everything. But this time, he did not even look at her. Instead, he walked straight up to Vin Diesel and extended a hand. "Mr. Diesel, I sincerely apologize for my daughter's actions. I was unaware of the extent of her behavior. I assure you, it will be handled." Madison's heart dropped. "Dad?" she whispered, stepping forward. Nathaniel barely glanced at her. "Get in the car, Madison." His voice was cold, devoid of the usual indulgence. "We have a lot to talk about." The crowd watched as Madison, once the school's untouchable queen bee, now looked small, defeated, forgotten. Ava took a deep breath. It was over. She turned to Vin Diesel, who gave her a proud nod. And as they walked past the cameras, leaving the chaos behind, she felt something she had never felt before. Freedom. Vin Diesel's voice was steady as he spoke one last time to the press. "This is what happens when the truth comes out. Bullying thrives in silence, but when people stand up, justice wins." Then, turning to the camera, he said with a smirk, "And if you love seeing bullies get what they deserve," Ava smiled. For the first time in her life, she was not the girl who got pushed down. She was the girl who stood tall, and the world was finally watching. As Madison was driven away in silence, Ava felt the weight of the past finally lift off her shoulders. The girl who had made her life miserable was gone, powerless, and exposed. But despite everything, Ava did not feel the need to celebrate. She had already won. Vin Diesel placed a hand on her shoulder as they walked towards his sleek black Escalade. "You okay, kid?" he asked, his voice softer now. Ava nodded. "Yeah, for the first time in a long time." As they got into the car, a sudden buzz on Ava's phone made her eyebrows rise. She checked her notifications and nearly gasped. Her name was trending. Justice for Ava. Stop bullying now. People from all over the country were sharing her story. Celebrities, influencers, even school officials were commenting on the importance of standing up to bullies. Her inbox was filled with messages of support. "You're so brave, Ava. I went through the same thing in high school. Thank you for sharing your story. I used to be bullied, and this video gave me the courage to stand up for myself. Thank you." Ava's chest tightened. She had spent so long feeling invisible, but now, the whole world was listening. Vin Diesel chuckled beside her. "Told you, kid. Never let anyone dim your light." She smiled at him, her heart swelling with something she had never felt before. Pride. As the car pulled away from the school, Ava stared out the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. This was just the beginning. She was no longer just the girl who got bullied. She was a fighter. And the world? It was finally cheering for her. That night, Ava sat on the balcony of Vin Diesel's penthouse in Los Angeles, staring at the city skyline. Everything had changed. The once quiet girl, who had been mocked and humiliated, was now at the center of a national conversation. Her phone buzzed again. An email from Harvard University. Her eyes widened as she read the words. "Dear Ava, we have seen your story and admire your courage. We would love to offer you a full scholarship to study at our institution. We believe you have a bright future ahead." Her breath hitched. A scholarship. To Harvard. She turned to Vin Diesel, her voice barely a whisper. "Is this real?" He grinned. "You tell me, kid." Tears welled in Ava's eyes. Everything she had endured, every insult, every moment of pain, it all led to this. Just then, her phone buzzed again. This time, a video call request. She gasped when she saw the name. Michelle Obama. Vin Diesel chuckled. "Told you, kid. The world is watching. Now, what are you going to do with it?" Ava wiped her tears and took a deep breath before answering. "Hello, Mrs. Obama." As the call connected, the city lights flickered behind her, And for the first time in her life, Ava knew. She was meant for something greater. If you loved this story, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more powerful and inspiring stories.